My journey began as a social media freelancer doing way too much for way too little.
Couple IG updates today. Instagram has taken another feature from Snapchat. Social media is a branding game. Behind that Facebook and Instagram algorithm curtain.
Until I fell in love with podcasting. Since then, I've been behind the scenes, building, growing, and scaling podcasts for some of the biggest brands on the planet. And I think it's time we turn the cameras on ourselves to share our experience. Welcome to Creative Control, a show about the art and business of content, how to build it, how to scale it, and how to actually make it matter. We're going to break down the game, dive deep on industry topics, and we're going to sit with the people shaping the culture of creative. Artists to athletes, entrepreneurs to influencers, celebrities to CEOs. It's casual, but comprehensive. It's high level, but real. I'm Alex Legos. This is Creative Control. Welcome to Creative Control. Thank you for pressing play. We're happy to have you. My name's Alex Legos, founder of Legos Creative, Nashville podcasting agency. Back there in the back, we have EASTON on our production. We are diving in today to something that I have designed over years and years of working in the space, and I'm calling it Podcast 360. Nope, I'm not. I'm calling it Podcast 360. Get it right. Years and years of prep, and I blew it on the first one. Podcast 360. What Podcast 360 is hoping to accomplish is I want to run through a 30,000 foot view of our entire podcasting process. That means we're including things from the inception of I want a podcast and where do you go from there, all the way through to, okay, the podcast is running, we're distributing, we're marketing, the production's honed in, we got clips out the ass, we got graphics everywhere, and now how do we monetize this thing? So I want to fill in the gap between day one of I want a podcast to whatever that next day is, day 100 or whatever you want to call it, of how do we make money on this thing. And so today, that's what we're going to be doing. So if that's what you're looking for, like, subscribe, comment, let us know what you think, and let's dive into this thing. I think initially when somebody thinks, and we hear it all the time, I want to have a podcast, the logical next thought some people get to, or most people get to even, I think, is, well, there's so many of them already, though. It's oversaturated. The space is full of people just yapping every single minute of every single day. Is there even room for me? Is there even a need for me? Do I even need to be there? What am I really going to bring to the table that somebody else already isn't? And so I think the stat now is there's over 5 million podcasts, which is a ton, and that's definitely overwhelming when you think about that. It can be intimidating. Have you heard similar stuff, Easton?
Yeah, this is one of my least favorite things that I have to hear about, to be honest. Is like there's
people saying there's too many?
Well, it's just like it always seems to be people use it to like discount like what a podcast is, like almost like a knock on podcasting.
Yes.
And what I always tell people is like, how many artists are there uploading music to SoundCloud? Mm-hmm. Probably more than 5 million.
Oh, definitely more than 5 million.
And there's not anyone listening to it.
How many TV shows are there? How many movies are there? How many restaurants are there? I think every industry gets to a point where you could look at it at face value and say, this is oversaturated. There's way too many people here. And I think what that means is you're just reaching maturity of an industry. Mm-hmm. I think that said, once industries reach that point, which I think podcasting has definitely gotten close to or is getting into over the last year or so, I think what that means is that you start to arrive at a place where the cream is going to rise to the top. And so, yes, there are too many podcasts in the sense that everybody could never possibly listen to every single one. That would be impossible. If there were 5 shows, cool, we could take that. We could listen to every single episode of every single one, no problem. The average podcast listener has 5 to 7 different shows on their weekly rotation that they tune into. So that would be doable. With there being 5 million, I get it. I understand what you're saying, but I also want to throw this number out there. It only takes 3,000 downloads per week to be in the top 1% of podcasts worldwide. Think about that. 3,000 downloads per week. And you're in the top 1% of podcasts. So what does that mean? Well, it means that, yes, there's a lot of podcasts out there, but there's not many having an impact. And that is kind of like I don't want to say selling point because it's not a sales pitch, even though we do build it into our sales pitch. It's more of an educational like fact check. Like, hey, yes, there's a ton of shows out there. Too many shows. You're right. But there's nobody who's really having any type of like lasting impression. It's a very small number of shows that are making an impact and that actually generate consistent, sizable audience. And so when you're looking at jumping into the space, I think it's important to know that no, it's not oversaturated. It's just noisy. And I love to say it that way because it is. There's just a lot of noise. In the same way that if you scroll through Spotify and you're looking for new music, it's noisy. There's so many artists. There's some that are like, label backed and they're, high production value and all that. And those are great. Then there's a bunch of other noise though. That's like, dude, this is all like, and no, this is not a knock to independent artists. There's a bunch of people who are just making stuff in their bedrooms and in their garages, and it's trash. There are great bedroom musicians and great garage musicians. That's not what this is. I'm not here to fight that battle. I love discovering very obscure artists. Fine, cool. All that said, you gotta sift through some noise to get to the good stuff. So there's too many podcasts? Sure, I'm with you. But not many of them actually are making an impact and breaking through the noise. I think the next step that people get to is like, well, what am I going to talk about then? Like if I get over the hump of, I understand that like I should get into the space, and I understand that like there's not too many for me to break through and I can make noise. How do I make noise? What am I even going to talk about? I think it's important to stick to what you know. I would never go start a podcast on agriculture and farming. I know nothing about it. Clip farming, got that down. Don't know anything about crops and tractors. I know nothing about it, so I'm not going to start that podcast. Extreme example, but stick to what you know. We know podcasting. That's why this podcast is a no-brainer for us to start. Sure, we know how to do this type of thing. And I think analyzing, like the way that I would encourage somebody to get to, well, what do I know? What does work for me that I should be podcasting about? Is analyzing your life to identify your areas of expertise and your strengths. So the simplest one is like, well, what do you do for work? That's an easy one if you want to do a professional podcast. But if you don't want to do a professional podcast and you want to do something that's more like entertainment value, comedy, I don't know, insert genre here, find what kind of comes natural to you and where you spend most of your thought time. I think that's an easy way to find like, all right, what should I actually be yapping about on mic? Anything on that? Would you add anything?
No.
Okay.
I like that.
Cool. Okay, so now we've, okay, cool, we're into it. We're going to do the podcast. I kind of know like what I'm going to talk about because I've done that analysis. Great. But it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work. And that's the reality of it. It is a lot of work. But there are more and more resources that are hitting, there's more and more research. There are more and more resources that are accessible to you through apps, through the internet, through software, things that will help to streamline that process. And so I think if you have a solid budget to work with, there's production and marketing companies obviously like us who are like, hey, we'll take parts of or all of that process off of your plate. But if you don't have a sizable budget and you're trying to pinch some pennies a little bit more, what we're going to do here is, in addition to running through the whole thing on this video, we're going to save you the time if you don't want to take notes through it, and we're going to give you a PDF of this entire outline that we're walking through. So we're going to walk through everything today from the branding, the production. Scroll back up, Easton. I had them all bulleted there. Branding, production, the distribution, the content creation, the social media management, and then lastly, and definitely not least, the monetization. And that's the one that people always want to jump to. So stick around. We're going to hit every one of those topics. And you'll be able to get that link in description to get the PDF file of all of that written out. So first of all, as I sip my drink, first of all, I want to get into branding. It's funny to me to see like when people are like, okay, I want to start a podcast, they run through those, let's call them roadblocks, like those three topics up top of like, there's too many of them. What am I going to talk about? And it's a lot of work. Those are roadblocks, and not many people make it through all three of those roadblocks. And then the fourth roadblock is always branding. Well, I got to make a logo. Well, I got to name the show. Well, what are the colors? Well, what's the vibe going to be? Do I need to create a mood board? I should get on Pinterest and I need to find a graphic designer. Sure, you can. It just depends on kind of like how high budget or how high effort you really want to go in this thing. I am a huge advocate for Canva, first of all. All branding, let's pull back the curtain, all branding for creative control. Me, Canva. In like 5 minutes. Done. Don't give it too much thought. I think that simple is better. And so like looking at ours, it's like, all right, cool. We got the 2 C's, very faint in the background, and that little millennial pink that I love. We have cream creative control across the front. We have a nice little dark charcoal in the back to make that creative control pop off and kind of hide the CC a little bit. Simple. You get it. Yep. I think that's easy branding. And then from that, we can get our watermarks and all the other things that we need brand-wise. You don't need to waste a lot of time. And I think when it comes to starting a podcast, that's where it really breaks down, is on those roadblocks, especially branding. I don't have, $2,500 to pay a graphic designer, or I don't even know a graphic designer to find for this type of thing. And wasting time on all the, like I said, Pinterest boards. And like, it's like, dude, you got to get to the show. You can change the branding as you go. And that's something that we'll harp on always, is like, don't feel like you have to be married to what the show is on day one. It can evolve over time. That's fine, and I think it's expected. So create a brand. Keep it simple. It's give the audience something that is easy for them to understand and remember, and plus it simplifies that whole creation process to get you started. Where does your brand need to be for a podcast? You should be on Instagram. You should be on TikTok, as long as it stays allowed in the United States if you're a U.S. Viewer. And you should be on YouTube. Those are must-haves, in my opinion. TikTok, I could be convinced that you don't need to be on TikTok. That's fine. I think if I was to reorder those in terms of like in order of priority, YouTube number 1, Instagram number 2, TikTok number 3, in order of importance. I would also recommend creating a separate account for your podcast. This is something that we get asked a lot. Should we do it? Why do we do it? We always say yes. And the reason why we say that you should create a separate account for your podcast content specifically is because you're going to be cranking out, in an ideal world, 5 to 10 clips a week on that podcast account. Mm-hmm. And when you're looking at, from the perspective of an audience member, looking at your personal account, I didn't follow you for the podcast. You didn't have it yet. It didn't exist. So when I followed you, I didn't sign up for 5 to 10 clips a week. Then all of a sudden you start hitting me with 5 to 10 clips a week. This is like when you go to a store and you you punch in your little thing so that you get whatever discount is on it. You get the card and all that type of stuff. And then all of a sudden they start flooding your inbox with like newsletters and updates and all. And you're like, whoa, hold on. I just wanted the 10% like club, TJ Maxx card thing or whatever it is. It's the same as that. You don't want to give people something they didn't sign up for. That will drive them away from you and away from your brand, and then they'll never actually get to the podcast like you want them to. So creating a separate podcast channel, let's use Instagram for example, because I think it's the best crossover opportunity here, cross-promotion opportunity. You create a separate Instagram channel for your podcast specifically. That way you can crank out week over week over week all your podcast content in clips, in graphics, in stories, etc. And then you're able to collaborate from your personal account however often you want. Yeah. Early on, that might be less frequent because you might not want to like hit everybody in the mouth with all these clips that you're cranking out. But I think it allows you to kind of like tastefully blend on your personal feed the content coming out of the podcast consistently. Yeah.
And on the flip side of that too, I think a lot of like some people may follow the podcast and not necessarily want your personal pictures of your dogs or whatever. Some people just want just the podcast stuff.
Absolutely.
So like it goes both ways, I think.
No question. And I think a really cool feature that a lot of people aren't aware of that we use a ton is when you post a clip to your podcast account and then you send a collab request to your personal account, from your personal account, you're able to obviously review that and accept it or ignore the collab, right? If you accept it, it puts it onto your your personal feed for your audience over there, as well as onto your profile grid. Now, the cool thing is, if you accept it and then you hit the 3 dots in the top right of the clip, you're able to then hit a button called remove from grid, I believe is how they've worded it. They switch it every now and then. Remove from grid or hide from grid. And what that's going to do is allow that clip to be collabed into your personal feed for your personal followers without holding real estate on your personal grid, on your profile. So when people go to your profile, they won't see it on your actual grid. If they swipe over to your Reels tab, they'll see it there. So it gives you some cross promotion without like taking over your feed. And that's something that we do for all of our accounts. We recommend it for everybody who is running a podcast if you don't want your personal feed to just basically become your podcast feed. The last reason why I always recommend creating a separate social media account for your podcast is because it puts you in a position later on as you grow the audience to be able to monetize that channel. We'll touch on, like we said at the end of this, the monetization component of podcasting. This is going to be part of that. You'll hear us touch on. You can obviously build in your social media audience. Again, let's stick with Instagram since we're here. Excuse me. We're going to build in your Instagram audience and your Instagram impressions to your ad opportunities for brands. And like I said, we'll touch on that in a little bit more detail later on, so stick around. The other place that you want to be as a podcast are your distribution channels. Obviously, we're going to need audio channels. There are so many options for audio distribution in podcasting. So many. That's another space that is like, hey, how oversaturated and noisy is this space? I think that, I know that in-house we like Megaphone. That's been our go-to for a minute here.
Not even close.
It is the best in terms of reliability and consistency. It's the best user interface. It gives the best data and reporting. It allows you to customize that data to generate reports in a way that I have not seen any other audio distribution platform before. And that's something that we're pushing all of our shows through. Now, that said, Megaphone is more so of it's more so useful to a company like us, where we have a roster of shows that we're distributing week over week versus an independent creator who just has one show. Yeah. So it's going to be more expensive, for sure. It's a few $100 a month. And then on the other hand, if you want to go more budget friendly, I love Buzzsprout. Yep. I think Buzzsprout is awesome. Before we went to Megaphone, we were on Buzzsprout. We pushed all our shows through Buzzsprout. It's great for a one-off show that is just, we only are pushing this show. We want to push it to all audio platforms. So that's going to put you on everything major, your Apple Podcasts, your Spotify. It's going to push you to Amazon. Google Podcast doesn't exist anymore, so it won't put you there. But there's also then like 22 other minor channels for all the Android people out there. So it'll just push it to one place on Buzzsprout, and they push it out to all of the other platforms, iHeart, Pandora, etc. And on that note, we have a referral code in the description of this. In full transparency, it is a referral code. If you want a quick discount and you want to go the Buzzsprout route, go ahead and hit that. You can use that and get a nice little kickback on it. And also on that, I want to talk about Buzzsprout a little bit more. The data and reporting on that is good as well. It's not as good as on Megaphone in the sense that I think Megaphone goes a little bit more granular on it. They go into more detail, and they allow you to customize the data that you're looking at a little bit more. But I mean, again, we ran on Buzzsprout for years. I think we were there for 2.5 years, and it was great for us. So I would assume it would be great for you as well, especially if you're a newer show just starting out. So you want to be on audio platforms. You want to be on all audio platforms too. I would never recommend somebody goes direct to platform. I know a lot of people are buying into the buzz that Spotify is generating around Spotify for creators. It was, and Spotify for podcasters. We've looked into it. I would not recommend it. I still maintain and have always said, go to a distribution platform that allows you to upload to one place and distribute to all platforms. It's just the best bang for your buck. It's the most efficient. It's the most reliable. And you get all your data from all of those platforms aggregated into one place. So you don't have to go and be like, well, what's our listenership on Apple? What's our listenership on Spotify? It's all in one spot, which makes it really easier, again, for when we get to monetization conversations to present that to brands.
Yep.
So that's the audio side. For video, you're going to want to be on YouTube. And I will beat this horse into the ground and through all 9 layers of hell. I will beat this horse. You should put your podcast on YouTube. You should.
Yep.
It's where everybody watches video. Going back to 2007, when people were like, where do you watch video on the internet? It was YouTube. Fast forward to 2017. Where do you watch video on the web? YouTube. And then if you fast forward then to 2027, I'm pretty confident people are going to say, well, where do you watch video on the web? It's YouTube. So put your podcast on YouTube, and there's more benefits to that we'll touch on as we continue to walk through this process, but that's where you want to put your video.
Question for you.
Yes.
'Cause I hear this all the time,
yes.
and I want you to break this down so people can understand. Using our same thing about audio, we want to be on every audio platform. Can you explain why someone wouldn't want to go put it on YouTube and put it on Rumble and put it on Kick and put it on whatever else is out there?
Yeah, there's a few reasons. The first one that I would think of is logistically, how annoying is that?
Very.
There is no platform right now that you can upload one video to, and then that video gets put on all the platforms. On the audio side, that exists in a Megaphone or a Buzzsprout or any, Libsyn or Blueberry or whatever. I don't even know. There's so many of them. That exists on the audio side. On the video side, that's not a thing.
Yep.
So I wouldn't recommend trying to go and do that because that's a nightmare week over week. The other reason is because YouTube is going to allow you the opportunity to monetize, which again, we'll get to that. And even in the video portion of this, before we get to the monetization, we'll get into this a little bit more. But the creator program on YouTube is the best out. Spotify has been trying to tell everybody that theirs is going to be better. And then when they came out and showed the numbers, it actually wasn't better. It's worse. So that's, I think, the best bang for your buck when it comes to monetization there through their dynamic ad placements, because they're going to handle all that in the background for you. And then the last reason is because YouTube is Google. YouTube is part of Google. So everything that goes onto YouTube is then indexed into Google search, which then is going to help with your brand's SEO. So now when somebody goes and searches creative control, we can, if we did no SEO work whatsoever, we would still show up if you go search creative control on Google, because we've put in all of the titles and the descriptions and the transcriptions and all the clips, and all the bios and all that type of stuff over on YouTube. So I would say those are probably my 3 off-the-cuff reasons of why YouTube's going to be your best bet when it comes to video on podcasts. Excuse me. Having a tough time over here today. The last part of this branding roadblock is the name. And I left this to last on purpose because I think that the name is something that people will have in their notes for years. Creative control was in my notes for years. Or they'll wrestle with it and not think that it's as good as it could be, or feel like they have to come up with the perfect one on day one. And I think what the name of a podcast really comes down to is it's not that big a deal what it is. There's some dumb show names out there, and I'm not going to call any out. There's some show names out there of some very prominent podcasts that have nothing to do with what the podcast what the podcast is. It just isn't that important. I think it's more so you want to create a name that is catchy, is memorable, is unique. That's really it. It really doesn't matter at all. And I also think when you're coming up with a name, building the show concept first, which is how we recommend you do it, actually informs your process of coming up with the final name. And so let's move forward to kind of like production.
Yep.
And we can get into, first of all, pre-production, the general direction of the show. First of all, how long is your show? What's your runtime? What's your duration? What's your show length? How long are you gonna yap for? Is this a quick 5-minute to 10-minute show that is like really, really bite-sized? Cool. Awesome. Is this a 15 to 20-minute show? Is this something that's a little bit longer? Now we're getting into drive time and, folding laundry or doing dishes, which is great. I love that runtime right now. Anywhere like, honestly, 20 to 30 right now is kind of my favorite as we run past the 30-minute mark in a second. 20 to 30, I think, is my favorite right now for a new show because it's a very attainable duration to fill. It's hard to fill time. It really is. And I think if you are not somebody who has experience doing like speaking on a microphone or into a camera, you really might want to consider aiming for shorter. And then if you run over, great. That's awesome. I think then once you get up towards like 40 to 60 and then beyond that is like now you're expert level podcasting. Your stuff better be good.
Yep.
Because maintaining viewership and listenership over that amount of time is even more challenging than just filling that amount of time. So if you can talk for that long, great. But is it good is what it really comes down to. So figure out that show length based on all that info and be really honest with yourself about what you think you can actually do and understand that if you allot 20 minutes for yourself and you go 45, great. That's cool. But don't allot 45 and only go 20 and be like, shit, now what? Let's define the objective of your show. What is the purpose behind your podcast? What can your audience expect to take away from each week's episode? So for Creative Control, you're going to get either deep dives on industry topics like this, where we're kind of educational and we're giving you the information from our experience and what we've seen best practices are, or you're going to get conversations with other creators, people in creative spaces who are bringing their perspectives to the table to discuss industry topics, to tell stories about industry experience, etc. Those are things that you can always get here from Creative Control week over week. And then you get to topics. What are we going to cover? Or how we term them, pillars. I like to build shows on 3 to 4 pillars of content. And these pillars help you define the foundation of your podcast, and they can also act over time as a compass for you as things arise. So if you need to decide a topic hits your desk and you're like, does this fit for the show? All you have to do is refer back to your pillars that we'll get into how to kind of define those right now. Go back to your pillars and bounce it up against those. Does this fit under one of these umbrellas? So I think the best way to understand this is through an example. And we'll use the biggest show on earth as the example because I think most people will be most familiar with it. The Joe Rogan Experience. Heard of it? Joe's show has always had a foundation of comedy. He's a comedian, so he knows comedy well. And he speaks with comedians because he has a lot of comedy friends. So comedy is pillar 1. These aren't necessarily in any order. Martial arts. He loves martial arts. He's been a martial artist himself for decades. He is one of the main commentators for the UFC. He is friends and connected with a lot of martial artists themselves and people in and surrounding that space. So martial arts is something that is a big pillar for him as well. The third one, fitness/nutrition. He's obsessed with fitness. He's obsessed with nutrition. These are things that he's interested in, that he practices himself. He's, again, connected with a lot of people in or around those industries, and so he's able to bring a lot of them in, and he genuinely enjoys those conversations with people from fitness and nutrition backgrounds.
Yep.
The last one, and you could stop there, by the way. That's a great show. All 3 of those, I think, is fantastic. There's audience members out there that are going to resonate with all 3 of those. Perfect. I would throw Joe a 4th pillar, and I don't always recommend having a 4th pillar, but Joe works because those first 3 are so strong and so defined that I think he can throw a 4th one on there, and he has. And those are really just his random curiosities. He didn't. I don't think he came in with this in mind. I think this was something that naturally just took place. He has gotten he's gotten into over the years politics. He's gotten into aliens. He's gotten into the tech space. He's gotten into hunting and outdoors. These are just his kind of random curiosities that he likes to poke around at. These are fun conversations for him. The politics thing, I think, was kind of like he was thrust into a position where he kind of had to have those conversations. That said, I think those random curiosities are something that if you feel very convicted about your first 3 pillars, define your show well, then yeah, you can kind of leave some room to have some other topics, that aren't necessarily set in stone, I guess you could say. Make sense?
Yep.
Thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the biggest thing with like the pillars situation that we just laid out is like I think he built the show solidly off the first 3.
Yes.
And then the 4th was like I feel like he didn't really start getting into the random stuff or having people that didn't really line up with these first 3 until he was already at a place where he had an audience anyway, and people were asking for that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Like I think he really built the show off the comedy, the MMA stuff, and then the fitness nutrition stuff, and then the politics, aliens, tech, hunting stuff all kind of followed suit because then he has an audience who wants to hear about his experiences and thoughts and all that stuff, and they're already following him. So then he can go that way. Yeah,
and I think that's something we could touch on real quick too. You have to earn your audience's trust to go away from your pillars. I think if we just came in here and I was like, hey, so today we're talking about the latest F1 race, I care about that. You don't. That's not why you're here. Over time, maybe you will, because maybe you'll like to just hang out with us and talk about whatever we want to talk about. But initially, it's like, hey, we got to hit on these pillars and make sure that we're giving our audience what they have signed up for every single week, similar to the social media feed thing. So yes, I would agree. I think those random curiosities kind of came over time. Now let's go to the structure of the show. I think breaking up time in an episode outline is crucial. Telling yourself, like, we're going to do 5 minutes on this, we're going to do 10 minutes on this, we're going to do 10 minutes on this, we're going to do 5 minutes on this, and then we're going to wrap. That kind of puts you in a spot where you know what you've allotted. You've kind of already examined the topics in your head and been like, yeah, I could do 10 minutes on branding. That's pretty easy. I could definitely crush that. 10 minutes for branding, put it on the board. You build that up, and it gives you just like what we like to call like a roadmap. And so we have that roadmap now of it's what I'm looking at on the monitor right now off screen. It gives you the roadmap of where you guys want to go. And the reason why we use the term roadmap for it is because you want to still leave room for magic. So if you go on a hike, you want to stay on the trail for the most part. But sometimes you see something cool off the trail and you want to wander off the trail. And sometimes you find the most fun off the trail. I think in a podcast episode, the same thing is true. You can go in there with a plan. You can go in there with your roadmap. You can know that, okay, this is the path that we want to go down because this is what we've thought ahead on and said this is going to make for the best episode. But if you end up in a position where, especially in a conversational setting, you get into something that like, oh, this is really good. Hold on, let me set up. This is really good. This wasn't on the roadmap, but I'm liking where we're going here. Next thing you know, you're 10 to 15 minutes into a topic that you couldn't have planned for if you tried, but that might end up being the best portion of the episode. Once you get finished with that, you might be like, oh shit, we're way off path. But that's okay because you have a map. So you go back to your roadmap and you're able to bring things back around if you want to. If the adventure continues off the path, go for it. But that's why we call it a roadmap. That's why we try to shape our episodes that way before we hit record, so that we know we have a plan, but we're also going to leave room for that magic. Some of the best episodes that we've ever produced for shows across the board, across our entirety of our company, have been episodes where we didn't even touch the roadmap, where we sit down and immediately something sparks a conversation on a topic that is not on the plan, and we just go. And next thing you know, it's been an hour and 15 minutes, and it's like, damn, we didn't hit anything we planned to hit, but this was gold.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And I think that goes back to like being malleable in the podcast space and not being married to like, well, we got to make sure that we get to have a feel, have a sense for like what the conversation is going to be.
Yep.
This obviously differs for things like today where it's like, hey, no, I want to walk through some subject material. We're going to hit this subject matter. You'd be pissed if I was like, yeah, but again, about the F1 stuff. And we just went and did that for the next 20 minutes. So again, back to have a feel. What else am I missing from that section? Is there anything else there that I need to touch? Segments. I think segments can be really helpful for new shows. I think it can help with things like if you're having trouble breaking the ice a segment can help kind of like ease the mood in the room, or kind of like get you into it, or get a guest into it, where those intro phases of a conversation can be weird sometimes. And so I think a segment can help with that. They can also just help you fill time. If you're like, hey, we want to do a 30-minute episode, but on this one I only have like 20 minutes, let's build a 10-minute segment that's going to fill that last 10 minutes of the episode for us. So that can be really helpful.
Yeah. Also, to end, I think it also helps, like if you have trouble kind of like coming to an end, or like feeling like you are cutting people off, just be like, all right, we're going to go into our XYZ segment, and then after that you're like, all right, thanks. Like, it's an easy way to also come out if you have trouble like just ending it. Agreed.
And I think it's nice for an audience member too to know that, like, and when we get to the end, we're going to hit this segment every single week, and that's going to wrap things up, and it's a fun little thing, whatever it is, and you get that, and you're then able to move on with your day. I like that a lot. Best conversations. For the super advanced. The ideal way to structure an episode is actually to build it in reverse. And this is something that over time in podcasting has become more and more the gold standard. If you're at a place where you kind of feel like you have everything ironed out and you're feeling kind of expert level, what you'll do is actually go into an episode, whether with a guest or with subject matter, and already know ahead of time, here are the clips we want to generate. Here are the thumbnails we're going to use. Here are the YouTube titles for those clips that we're going to post. And if you go into it with all that stuff in mind, you're then able to build the show from back to front. So that takes going in with a plan to the next level. It's something that I don't think for a beginner or even an intermediate is something that's important to think about yet. If you want to try that thought experiment and give it a shot and you can figure it out, all power to you. Do it. That's where you need to be. That's going to maximize what you're doing. But if that sounds intimidating and you're just getting started, don't really sweat that. You can get there. Focus on instead the conversation and the structure that we just kind of outlined on how to put that together.
Yep.
And I think we'll do another video soon where we can dive into that process and what that looks like. We can show some examples. So subscribe if you want to see that. Like, comment, blah, 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 all that good stuff. Okay, recording. I want to kind of like speed run through some of this. Recording, audio, quality is your first impression.
Yep.
Make a good one. It is so important, especially on audio, where it is one sense. You're just in someone's ears. That's it. That's all they have to go off of. They can't look at you and be like, well, the set's cute. Well, I like their shirt, and give you a break if the audio is kind of subpar. Your audio needs to be crisp. And podcasting has gotten to a place for audio and video that if you don't have studio quality HD audio that somebody can press play on and be like, I have no qualms about this, they will find somebody else who's going to give them better quality audio. So get that right. With that, we want to help you. Linked in the description of this episode, we have totally free. You can access a list. It's like a shopping list that we would give you of mics, cameras, lights, and more, like our SD cards, like all, like literally anything that you could, Rodecaster, all like anything, audio interface, software, anything that you would need to buy. And we're showing options as well, like on the top tier list of things that we actually use here to produce our episodes on and our biggest shows episodes on. But we're also showing things that are more budget friendly, that are like, hey, if you can't afford the, X $1,000 camera, here's another option that's going to still do you right and you're going to be able to get it done. Hit that, check it out, enjoy. But that quality is so important. Yep. And if you don't have that, like your first impression is everything. If you don't have that, they're going to find somebody else who does, and they're going to move on. What else can I touch on with the audio of it? I think that's pretty much it. I think having your audio top tier is crucial. Once you get into video, and same deal again, all of that is linked in that equipment list, and full transparency on that as well. Those are affiliate links. It doesn't change your pricing at all. We do get a kickback from Amazon on that if you go ahead and use those links and purchase, but doesn't change your experience whatsoever. And I think I'm legally required to say that. Video. Same thing. Quality is your first impression. Make video your first priority. And there's a couple of reasons why. One of them is because it gives you a visual for your episode, which I think increases viewership, increases viewer retention. People are using then two senses, sight and hearing, to intake and consume your episode. But it's also going to give you clips. So now all of a sudden you have video that you can use for marketing content versus the old marketing way, man. My goodness, was like, I mean, how do you even market an audio show? Brutal. We've all seen the logo graphic on the feed with the waveform over it. You don't listen to it. You don't click on it. You don't comment on it. You don't share it. You don't go to somebody's episode after that. People want to see clips. Clips have become gold standard for podcast marketing. Generate video episodes in as high quality as you can through lighting, through quality cameras, through quality microphones. That will then generate visual for your episode as well as video content for your clips. Video was the future of podcasting in 2018 when we said it and when we started to build this thing, and it is happening right now. So it's not a new thing. Get with the times.
Yep. I would say something's better than nothing as far as video goes.
Absolutely, dude.
Like if you have one camera and that's all you got, something is better than absolutely nothing.
Yes, no question. And there's studios like ours that you can rent now too, where it's like they'll take care of the production for you and they'll give you the files and then you can do what you want. For relative, I mean, our 30-minute session is $60 as of today. So I think take advantage of that type of thing if you need it. On the other hand, hit that equipment list. You can go through that.
Yep.
Post-production. I think episode edits it's been cool to watch them evolve in podcasting where there's different styles that are kind of like hitting the scene every day. So like I would recommend do some research on what you like, find some shows that you like, and then find what works for you and add your own touch to give your audience a unique viewing experience. I think that there's very standard, again, let's go back to Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan's show is the most basic podcast production there is. It is 3 cameras, sometimes 4 if they cut back to Jamie, and then sometimes they'll share what's on the monitor on the screen as a picture-in-picture. It is so standard. It's all just straight cuts, very simple, very easy, and that works. And that's how most shows are working, by the way. There's also then way, way, way overdone shit in a cool way. Like my favorite show in terms of editing is Take Your Shoes Off, Rick Glassman.
Yep.
He's got an animator that's working to,
it's crazy.
Like they'll have a snowball fight and they'll animate in the snowballs. It's insane, the way that he runs that show. I am obsessed with it. I can't imagine the amount of attention to detail and effort that goes into that production. Easton's glad that we don't do a show like that for sure.
Facts.
Moving on. Find what works for you. That's kind of the summary there. Distribution. We touched on the platforms already, so I won't dive into those, but definitely pick a distribution platform that's going to put you onto the major and the minor platforms. You want to be everywhere with audio, video. You want to publish your full video episodes to YouTube. The full thing, the whole kit and caboodle.
Yep.
YouTube's always been our primary focus for podcasting. It allows us to share episodes and clips on the same platform, which is my favorite thing about it. And you're paid for views, which is my second favorite thing about it. As of right now, I would not recommend pushing video episodes to Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Couple reasons. Yes, Apple Podcasts. They have a video. They have a video component. It's been there, but no one's really doing anything with it. In fact, to be honest, they might have killed it since I wrote this.
I was going to say, yeah, I've never heard of that.
I would say don't share to those other platforms and only share to YouTube because it cannibalizes your YouTube viewership. I think that's pretty straightforward. YouTube Creator Program pays at a better rate than Spotify's does. I don't even think Apple has one. And then, like we said, YouTube is Google. So your episode descriptions and clips and all that will automatically help your show's SEO when it comes to people wanting to find your brand when they search it. Let's dive into the content model because I think everybody kind of gets it up until this point of like, okay, cool, we get that like we got to do a podcast and we got to put out the podcast. We probably spent too much time on it, to be honest. The content model that I put together in 2017 and into 2018, the major inspiration that came from it, and this is, by the way, this is how to market your podcast 101. This is it, and we'll do another video where we really go deep dive on it. So subscribe if you want to find that coming up soon, but we'll do kind of like overview of the history behind it and then why it's important for you and kind of like elementary first steps to get into it. I developed this model in 2017, 2018. I was doing my own show called The Socialscape, where I was doing something like this, but like a rundown of topics, social media news. It was Instagram updates. It was, hey, Facebook's doing this. Hey, Twitter's doing this. Hey, LinkedIn's doing this, whatever. Just a rundown. I built this model because I was watching, as all early young entrepreneurs do, I was watching Gary Vaynerchuk. And Gary was doing this thing with his vlog where he was vlogging his entire workday, and then his team was cutting it down into clips and then putting those out onto social, and they were putting together graphics with quotes and putting those out onto social, and they were taking some of those quotes and putting them as tweets and putting those out. And I'm watching him do that with his vlog, and then simultaneously I'm watching Joe Rogan's YouTube channel where he also has like JRE clips, and he's posting extended segments, like 10 to 30 minute clips from the podcast, but just isolated topics. And I'm watching those videos outpace his main episodes in views. So he'd have Elon on and he would say, here's the Elon Musk episode. And that would go out and that would do 5 million views. And then he would post Elon smokes joint on Joe Rogan Experience. And that video would do 45 million views. Mm-hmm. And I was like, hold on a minute. Why isn't anybody doing this across all platforms in podcasting? And so looking at the space through my, I was a social media marketing freelancer, I was like, why is nobody doing this? And at the time, it was like we talked about, it was like a graphic of the logo with a waveform over it, and 80% of people had their sound off. That was the stat that I knew was true on social, so nobody was hearing these clips, and then the engagement on them was trash, and then nobody was sharing them, and it wasn't converting people back to the actual episode, which was the goal of the content in the first place. So I built a model, and the model was focused on, well, how should podcast content appear on a social media feed in a way that's engaging and shareable and that converts people back to consuming the whole episode? The answer had to be immediately video. So, okay, great. We need to film the entire episode then. So we filmed the entire episode. Well, now we have the entire episode on film. We should put the full episode out. So we'd put the full episode out. And then from there, we're able to grab those extended segments of 8 to 12 minutes. And then we're able to grab shorter ones that are like 3 to 5. And then we're able to grab shorter ones that are like 60 seconds or less. And those go vertical because they can go on Instagram and all that type of stuff. And then we can take quotes from those and create quote graphics. And all of a sudden we had this massive content funnel. And that funnel is what I plugged into Bussin With The Boys. It was a show by 2 NFL players, Will Compton and Taylor Lewan. We plugged that model in. The show exploded for more reasons than just my content model. It's not like I'm the magician who made that thing pop. Plug that in. That show exploded. Barstool Sports knocked on the door and said, we want to acquire the show, and we want to take our shows into the YouTube world the way that you guys have your YouTube channel organized, and the way that you guys run social. That, for me, was like, okay, cool. This is a company then. And so that's how Legos Creative came to be born. That model has proven over the years, as we've tweaked it and honed it in, as time has gone on and as new platforms have come out, TikTok came around, we pushed to TikTok. That model has remained true. Not only has it stood the test of time, but it has also been effective across all industries of podcast. So whether it's a show on the professional side, a show on the entertainment side, whether it's a solo show, whether it's a conversational show, this model has remained to be what we would say is the best method for podcast marketing organically. Yep. And I think the best way to understand why it works are these 2 examples. One, the comedian concept. If I like a comedian, I'm not going to send you an hour-long special by that comedian, because that comedian hasn't earned your trust yet to get you to spend an hour of time on them. You don't know this guy or girl. You don't know who this is. Why would you dedicate 60 minutes of your time to decide if you like this person in their content. Instead, I would send you a video of one joke that I like. It's probably going to be 60 seconds or less, because I know that you'll risk 60 seconds of your life on maybe I'll find a new comedian that I like. So I'll send you that, and then you'll get a taste of that. And then maybe that leads you down a rabbit hole of watching 2 and 3 and 5 and 10 and 20. And next thing you know, you've spent an hour watching clips of this comedian. And then you realize, oh, there's a special. And then you watch another hour of them. That's what we're doing in podcasting. We're putting out video clips of topics from the show in hopes of the audience will see one clip and be like, oh, those guys are funny. Cool. Next. Oh, there's another one. Oh, that's funny too. Oh, cool. Comment maybe. Oh, nice. Da-da-da. Oh, this is my third clip now. I'm going to follow this page. Oh, I'm going to go find them on audio platforms and on YouTube and then subscribe on both of those. And then I'm going to, all of a sudden, they're now in the ecosystem because of these little sample sizes. The other, I won't spend too much time on this next one, but the other one is like, it is a taste test. If I like a dish at a restaurant, I'm not going to make you order that dish if we go to dinner. I'm just going to be like, hey, I'll get it and you can try mine. And then you try mine and you like it. And so then the next time you come back, you order the whole dish. Simple. Bite size, taste test. We want to get our audience to wanting the full meal, and the way that we get them there is by giving them small bite-sized pieces of what we're doing. This is how audiences grow. People are not finding new podcasts from advertising. I will say that again. People are not finding new podcasts from advertising, mostly. They are finding it through clips on social media that are being shared with them by either their friends and family or their algorithm. And thank God for the algorithm, by the way. We will just pray as we throw in content to it that content finds the right people. And it does over time, and that's why consistency is so important. This is also why podcast social media audiences almost always outweigh episode listenership and viewership. And that's okay. Most people just want the bite size. Most people, if you say like, hey, do you listen to Tim Dillon? They'll be like, well, I watch the clips. Because they don't have an hour 15 to give Tim every week, or they don't want to give Tim an hour 15 every week, but they like the clips, and they know that social team is proven to get the best stuff from the show to the social feeds, and so cool. They're cool with that. So how do we make this happen? I think I want to really pull back the curtain on how we actually do our strategy when it comes to clips. After every episode recording, we have a post-production meeting. That post-production meeting is between our production team as well as the talent. In that, we say, here's our notes from as we recorded this episode. Here's all the things that we thought were notable and we should spotlight on a social in the form of clips. These ones are probably horizontal. They'll go onto YouTube in longer video. And then these ones are vertical. They're going to go in short form on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts. Then these are the meaningful quotes that we pulled from that could end up as quote graphics if we want to push that onto platforms as well. We then bounce that back and forth with the talent. Hey, what did you like? Here's what we like. We come to an agreement on, all right, this is our list of however many clips we've allocated for that account. We then prioritize those in order of importance. That could be like if something is timely, it needs to be done quicker because like maybe it's a relevant topic for current event. We need to get that out there. Or maybe it's something that is just funnier objectively than the other clips, and so that one is prioritized up top. Those all get numbered. We then push that to social media over the course of the week. And as you're taking those clips and dripping them out day by day, 1 a day, 2 a day, however many you can do, the more the merrier, pretty much. You're now maintaining a consistent presence on your social media channels, which is what audiences are looking for. That is our model from front to back of how we podcast and how you can take initial steps towards not only building your show, not only producing your show and distributing your show, but also then marketing your show. Before we go into monetization here, Easton, can you think of anything that we have not touched?
Let's see. I think we got pretty much everything. My only thing would be file management wise, being organized on that side of it.
Yeah.
because you'd rather be safe than sorry, and we've kind of figured that out over time. Is we have like 3 backups for everything. For cameras, we have 3 backups for video. Now we have like 3 backups for audio, because nothing's worse than losing files.
For sure. And I think that's the not budget-friendly version, is we can afford all these backups, obviously. The budget-friendly version of that is be disciplined in your process. Make sure you're hitting record. That sounds so dumb, but that is so real. I can't tell you how many nightmare production stories I've heard of people being like, the mics weren't on.
Yeah.
Or the cameras weren't rolling. It happens. Be disciplined, create for yourself even like a launch sheet of like, here's the thing, like a checklist, almost like as if you're taking off in the space shuttle and you have a checklist you need to run through for every production. Have that locked in. Excuse me. The other piece of that is just be organized with your files in post-production. Labels, folders, make sure you have this stuff so you know exactly where everything is at all times. We'll typically create an episode folder. Underneath that, there's a clips, there's a graphics, there's a YouTube. There, like everything is just underneath everything. We like to use Dropbox for our file organization. There's plenty of options out there. But figure out what works for you and what's going to allow you to be consistent on that. Let's hit monetization, and then we'll get out of here, because I know we've run past the time that we allotted for this. How do podcasts make money? And I will do a more specific deep dive on this where we can really get into how this works, how to price it, etc. Podcasts make money through primarily ad placements. Over time, it's become more of a known and accepted thing from audience members. Earlier in podcasts, people hated it. They hated hearing ads on their shows. They thought that it was ridiculous. They thought that it was greedy. They thought it was rude. Now it's become an accepted thing because I think people understand that to podcast at a high level, it is expensive. It does take money. And if you're going to build an audience of a certain size, you should be able to monetize that. The first way that podcasts will run an ad placement is a mid-roll ad. This is the most common form of podcast advertising. They're typically sold as 60-second ad reads by the host. So the advertisers essentially will send recommended ad copy. The hosts will read them at designated points throughout the episode, and they can be read live in the episode. Like right now, I could just be like, oh, by the way, that reminds me, this podcast is brought to you, and we could do an ad read. Or you could pre-record it and then place it in. So like we could immediately, how Rick Glassman does it on his show is he'll do this and snap, and then it'll cut to an ad, and then he'll snap back into the episode. You can do it either way. Both ways work. Typically, live in episode, which is called baked in, is typically a higher price point, slightly, whereas the cutaway stuff that's pre-recorded is a lower price point usually, just because it's not as natural of a listening experience, and it can hurt conversion a little bit. So that's mid-roll ad reads. The second way is title or presenting sponsorships. These are more collaborative partnerships than mid-roll ad reads. It's typically more all-encompassing in terms of the deliveries. In addition to the ad read, usually like at or near the top of the episode, the partnerships also might include deliverables like the brand's logo on the title card at the start of an episode, or the brand logo on streaming platform logos, or watermark in the corner for the duration of the episode, direct link to their site in the top line of the episode description, brand social media tags in the bios of the podcast social media channels. These are ways that like basically you really shake hands and link arms with a brand, and you're like, hey, we love this brand, the brand loves us, we want to do something long term. And that's typically like an annual deal is how those more title or presenting sponsorships will work.
Yeah, it's like how they sponsor like bowl games, like the All-State Sugar Bowl, something like that, where they're kind of looped in on every aspect of what's going on.
Yeah, their logos on the jerseys, their logos on the field, their logos in the it's the Sugar Bowl presented by so and so. It's all encompassing, kind of like a 360 type of partnership. The third ad placement would be a segment sponsor. So like I use this example all the time. Like if we were like, we're going to do a segment where we watch a clip of somebody who falls or is clumsy or drops something or gets dirty or like some sort of like mishap, and we're going to react to that clip. We could brand that as like, this is the mess of the week presented by Bounty Paper Towels. Love that one. Think that's a great segment idea. The segment is crisp and easy to understand. It fits perfectly with Bounty. You could also go and be like Clorox or other paper towel brand, like it, and you'd go would pitch that segment to all of those brands. Those are quick and easy. You'd probably throw a logo on the screen. You'd shout them out in like the way that let's do our mess of the week presented by Bounty Paper Towels. You might do a quick little ad read for them and then hit the segment. You can sell as many ad slots as you want on your podcast. The only thing I would say is be mindful of your audience's experience. I think it is annoying when every 10 minutes there's an ad read, and that does drive people away from shows because you get to a point where you're like, I'm listening to 60 to 120 seconds of ads for every 10 minutes of show. Mm-hmm. This ratio is unacceptable, essentially. So just be mindful of that. Typically on a 60-minute show, you're seeing 3 to 4, maybe 5, but 3 to 4 typically ad breaks.
Yep.
So keep that in mind.
And also keep in mind the baked-in ads from YouTube or from the audio platform.
Oh yeah, dude, nice. Yeah, if you're running mid-roll reads on your YouTube show, you might want to unclick the box that says run mid-roll reads on this, because you might end up in a position where it cuts to your mid-roll ad read, and then in the middle of your read, it'll cut to a YouTube inserted ad.
Yep.
So then you have adception, basically.
Yeah.
Ads within ads.
No bueno.
Lastly, to close this out, when should you start considering sponsors? My answer to this over the years has evolved, and I'm now at a place where I'm like, as soon as you can get them. I think if you can find a brand who, regardless of whether you're getting 100 views a week or you're getting 100,000 views a week, if you can find a brand to pay you to do this thing, do this thing. And again, in another video, we'll dive deep into like how to approach brands and how to get sponsorships, and when and how to position those stats even. But if you can get money for a podcast, get money for a podcast. There's examples of shows. My brother's, for example, my brother has not 100,000 views a week. It's a smaller show, but it's a niche audience, and he's a profitable podcast. And we'll have him on, and we'll have this discussion with him so he can kind of pull back the curtain on that for us. But that's an example of like, dude, you don't need to wait to do like 10,000 views a month. You can make this thing happen at a smaller audience if you can find the right brands and if you know how to position your numbers to be appealing to them. I think that's a good stopping place. I think we're just over an hour. I think we've walked through everything that I kind of wanted to cover. And again, if you're looking to get this all in a nice, tidy little PDF download, go ahead and hit the link in our description. You can head over to our site, lagoscreative.co, and that'll be available to you. If you took notes on this, awesome. I would think that meant that you paid more attention. So we appreciate you getting all the way through this. I know this was a lot. I wanted this coming into it to feel like a seminar. So I just yapped at you the whole time. And I hope that it was a little bit entertaining, but I really just wanted somebody to be able to click play on this video and understand from front to back, okay, how do I get this thing going? And then hit subscribe, come back to us, and we'll give you some even more in-depth look at each one of those segments of this walkthrough. That is Podcast 360. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned some things, and I hope you will start that podcast and become one of the 5 million plus. But don't just make noise. Break through that noise. Hope this helps. We'll see you next week. Thanks.